Welcome to the deep dive. We know you're here because you want to really understand things, understand topics, quickly and thoroughly, but also, not get bogged down.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Right. It's easy to get overwhelmed with just too much info.
Too much info. Yeah.
And so, what we're going to do today is we're going to do a deep dive, really get into the nitty gritty on a topic that's pretty fundamental to learning.
Yes.
And I think it can make a huge difference for you and how you retain what you learn.
Absolutely.
And basically the gist is how you practice recalling what you've learned is really, really important.
That's right. Yeah, think about all the times that you've, uh, studied something, right? And a lot of times the thing we do is just read it over and over again, read
Yeah.
it over and over again. But today we're going to talk about a more effective way to make that learning stick, and this is a research-backed way.
Yeah, and the guide for this deep dive is a really solid piece of research, I think.
Yes.
It's a meta-analysis.
Yes.
So that in itself is really cool for you, the listener, because it means that this research team went out and found basically all the research that had been done on this topic and kind of synthesized it.
Yes.
So it's not just one snapshot of findings.
Yeah.
It's a much clearer picture because it's synthesized a lot of the research.
Exactly.
So it's called a Meta-Analytic review of the benefit of spacing out retrieval practice episodes on retention.
Yes.
And that is by Latimer, Pear, and Ramus.
Uh-huh.
It was published in 2021 in the Educational Psychology Review.
Yeah.
So basically our mission today is to understand if spacing out your retrieval practice really works.
Yeah.
That's the big question.
That's the question.
Does it actually work?
Right.
And then, if it does work, is there a best way to do it?
Yes.
Is there like a best way to space these things out?
Right.
And then, what are the key takeaways that you can use right away to really optimize your learning?
Yeah.
Okay, so to start out with, we need to lay a foundation.
Yes.
We need to understand how powerful retrieval practice is in the first place. Just the act of trying to recall information.
Right.
Like this review starts with that, basically.
Yeah.
Showing us that simply quizzing yourself is much better for memory than just passively rereading.
Yeah. And what is fascinating is this isn't just an opinion.
Yeah.
The authors point to some really hard evidence from some meta-analyses.
Right.
So, for instance, Rowland in 2014, also Adesop and colleagues in 2017,
Mm-hmm.
they both found a strong and positive mean effect of retrieval practice. So what does this mean for you? You get significant gains in memory just by actively trying to remember what you've learned.
Yeah. And this isn't just for simple stuff like, memorizing a grocery list.
Right.
This holds true whether you're, trying to remember facts for a presentation or really grasp a complex idea,
Yes.
in a new field.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just limited to, a controlled lab setting.
Right.
They found that this works in real world settings.
Absolutely.
Like in classrooms or studying for an exam.
Yeah.
So really, if we connect this to the bigger picture for you,
Yeah.
it's really about making your brain actively work with the information.
Yes.
So when you try to retrieve something from memory, you're basically strengthening the pathways to that memory.
Yeah, making those connections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the review even mentions that this act of recall can actually help you apply that knowledge to related areas.
Yes.
So areas that you haven't specifically tested yourself on.
Right.
So it's kind of like building this, more interconnected web of understanding
Yeah.
in your mind.
Exactly.
So that's really cool. They also found that there are things that you can do to make retrieval practice even more effective.
Yes.
So this is cool. So for instance, when you're dealing with more complex material, the act of recalling it is naturally more challenging.
Yes.
Right. And that seems to boost memory.
Right.
Also getting feedback.
Yes.
Right. So knowing whether you got it right or wrong, that's really important.
Yeah. That feedback is crucial.
So this raises an interesting question for you in your learning.
Yes.
Are you actively challenging yourself to recall information?
Right.
Right.
Good question.
And are you checking to see if you got it right?
Yeah.
Are you looking at the answers?
Yeah.
Because it seems that the more effortful that retrieval process is,
Yeah.
the more your brain is gonna kind of lock it in.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And then that feedback helps you to correct any misunderstandings.
Right.
And it reinforces what you know.
Absolutely.
They also found that retrieval practice seems to be particularly beneficial for older students.
Yes.
So, like high school.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here's a tip for you.
Okay.
Mixing up the types of tests you use can also be really effective.
Yes.
So, for instance, using multiple choice questions,
Right.
but also trying to explain a concept in your own words.
Yeah.
Right? That's a different type of testing.
Absolutely.
So varying that up can be good.
Yes.
But the encouraging thing is that even just one attempt at recalling something is better than not testing yourself at all.
That's a huge point.
Right.
Yeah.
So even those quick mental quizzes, that you do in your head,
Yeah.
those can make a difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you don't need to like overhaul your entire study routine
Right.
to be constant, formal tests. But even just those little moments of self-quizzing really matter.
Yeah. All right, so we know that trying to recall information is good for your memory.
Yes.
But the main focus of this deep dive, and I think what you're really curious about, is this thing called the spacing effect.
Yes. Yeah.
So what is it, and why should you care?
So the spacing effect, or distributed learning, is simply the idea of spreading out your learning sessions on the same topic over time.
Okay.
Okay. So instead of cramming everything into one long session, you introduce breaks or lags between your study periods.
Okay. So that's spacing.
That's spacing, right?
You're not cramming.
Yeah.
You're spreading things out.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
And the benefit of that is that these breaks, they counteract forgetting.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
They give your brain time to really solidify new information.
Exactly. Yeah, think about it like building muscle.
Yeah.
Right? You don't work out one day for hours and hours.
Right.
You spread it out.
Yeah.
You allow for recovery and growth.
Right.
And it's the same thing with your brain.
I like that analogy. So it's kind of like, you work out and then you got to recover.
Yes.
And the brain's the same way.
Absolutely.
If you just, cram,
Yeah.
your brain doesn't have time to kind of, encode that and grow.
To process it. Yeah.
So that's really cool. And the evidence for the spacing effect is pretty robust, actually.
Yeah.
They point to several studies that have looked at this across different areas, from learning physical skills to memorizing information.
Yeah.
So it's really it's a pretty broad effect.
Yeah.
For instance, way back in 1989, Lee and Genovese found a benefit of spacing for motor learning.
Right.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's learning physical skills.
Yeah.
In 1999, Donovan and Radosevich, they saw positive effects in a wide range of learning situations, not just motor.
Yeah.
And even John Hattie's large-scale review in 2008 highlighted the positive effect of spacing on learning.
Right.
So this isn't a new idea, spacing out learning. This has been shown to be effective for quite some time. Right. In 2006, Sapita and colleagues they looked at spacing out restudying of verbal material. Specifically. So this is you read something and then you read it again later. And they looked at, how long should those gaps ideally be. And then more recently, Weishart and others in 2019 also found a substantial positive effect of spaced learning with verbal content.
Right.
So what's really cool here is how consistent this effect is.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if you're trying to learn, vocabulary or understand complex scientific concepts.
Yeah.
This spacing effect has been shown to improve, how well you remember it, and it works for people of all ages.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it sounds like even relatively short delays can make a difference.
Yes.
From a few seconds to several weeks.
Yes.
And they even mentioned that if you want to remember something for a really long time, you might benefit from having even longer intervals between your learning sessions.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. If you want to remember something 5 years from now,
Right.
you don't need to study it every day between now and then.
Right.
But you want to come back to it periodically.
Yeah.
At those increasing intervals.
Yeah. So if I want to remember something, 10 years from now,
Right.
I don't need to study it every week. I can study it, once a month or maybe even once every 6 months.
Yeah, exactly.
But those longer intervals for longer term retention, I think.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so now we get to the first of the two big questions that this meta-analysis really digs into.
Yeah.
And it's this. Does spaced retrieval practice beat mass retrieval practice?
Right.
Right. We know that both testing yourself and spacing out your learning are generally good.
Yeah.
But what happens when you put them together?
Yeah.
What happens when you try to recall information and you space out the recall attempts?
Yeah.
So that's really the key question.
Right. And that's where the findings are so compelling.
Yeah.
They found a strong benefit of spaced retrieval practice when compared to doing all your self-testing in one go.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the mass retrieval practice.
Right.
Right. You do all the testing right away.
Yeah, you cram it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the average effect size they found was 0.74.
Yeah.
And that was after accounting for publication bias.
That's right.
So that's that means a pretty significant improvement.
Yeah.
In how much you remember.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just by spreading out those self-testing sessions.
Yeah.
So instead of quizzing yourself repeatedly on something right after you learn it, you come back to it later.
Yeah.
And that seems to make a big difference.
Right.
And they talked about some of the theories that might explain why this works so well. Yeah.
So one idea is that when you try to recall information after a delay,
Right.
your brain has to work a little bit harder.
Yeah, you have to search for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this deeper processing strengthens the memory trace.
Yeah.
There's also something called the study phase retrieval theory.
Right.
And this suggests that making that act of retrieving the information effortful but ultimately successful is key to long-term retention.
Right.
So there's something about that, kind of struggle.
Yes.
To get the information.
Yeah.
They also mention how the context of your learning might change over time.
Right.
So when you come back to something later, your mental state might be different.
Yeah.
Even your environment might be different.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this variation can create more connections to that memory.
Yeah.
And kind of make it more robust.
Yeah. And then they talk about a model that suggests that spacing boosts the strength of the associations between the surrounding cues and the memory itself.
Right.
So basically, when you're learning something, there are all these cues around you, right?
Yeah.
It could be, the room you're in, the sounds you're hearing.
Right.
And spacing seems to strengthen those associations.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of potential ways that this could be working.
Right.
And the researchers discuss all these different possibilities.
Right.
But they acknowledge that this particular study couldn't definitively say which theory was the main reason why spaced retrieval practice is so effective.
Right.
But the consistent benefit is there,
Yes.
regardless of the exact underlying mechanisms.
Right.
All right, so let's move on to the second main question. And this I think is particularly interesting. Yes.
Because it challenges some advice that you've probably heard before.
Yeah.
So the question is, when you're spacing out your learning or your self-testing,
Right.
is it better to gradually increase the time between your attempts?
Yeah.
Or is it just as good to keep the intervals the same?
Yeah.
So that first one, gradually increasing the time, is called an expanding schedule.
Right. Expanding schedule.
And then keeping them the same is a uniform schedule.
Yeah.
So for instance, if you're doing an expanding schedule, you might review something one day,
Yeah.
then 3 days, then 7 days.
Right.
With a uniform schedule, you might just review it every 3 days.
Every 3 days. Yeah.
Okay, so what did they find?
And this is where the findings get a little bit surprising.
Yeah.
Contrary to what a lot of people believe,
Okay.
this meta-analysis found no significant difference in the effectiveness of expanding versus uniform spacing schedules.
Wow, that's really surprising.
Yeah. So that kind of goes against the common wisdom that you should always be pushing, those review sessions further and further apart.
Right. Right.
So it seems like, doing it, 1 day, 3 days, 7 days might not be any better
Yeah.
than just doing it every 3 days.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah.
They did observe that the results across the individual studies that they looked at
Yeah.
were quite varied. So
Yeah.
some studies showed a slight advantage for expanding schedules,
Yeah.
while others favored uniform ones.
Yeah.
So that suggests that there might be other factors
Correct.
that influence which schedule is slightly better.
Yep.
And they did find a potential hint.
Okay.
They looked at how many times learners were exposed to the material in total.
Yeah.
So how many times they saw it or studied it.
Right.
And it seems like the expanding schedule might be more beneficial
Yeah.
when you have more than 4 exposures to the material. So that includes your initial learning and all of your retrieval attempts.
Yeah.
So if you're encountering something many, many times,
Yeah.
maybe gradually increasing the intervals is better.
Yeah.
But it's important to note that this finding was only approaching statistical significance.
Yeah.
So we can't say for sure
Right.
based on this analysis,
Right.
but it is an interesting trend.
Sure.
But it seems to suggest that if you're only seeing the material a few times,
Right.
maybe the uniform schedule is good enough.
Yeah.
And this could tie into those models they mentioned earlier, suggesting that the best spacing
Yeah.
might depend on how strong your memory of something is at that moment.
That makes sense.
Right. So if you've encountered it more times,
Yeah.
your memory's probably stronger.
Yeah.
So maybe you can get away with those longer intervals.
Yeah.
But one thing that's important to keep in mind is that this meta-analysis specifically looked at retrieval practice.
Right.
Right. So actively trying to recall information.
Yes.
There is some research that suggests that expanding schedules might be more beneficial when you're just restudying material.
Right.
Right. When you're not actively trying to recall
Yeah.
it. So it seems like the type of practice you're doing matters.
Yeah. The type of practice matter.
When you're thinking about spacing schedules.
Right.
Okay, so what are the practical takeaways from all of this?
Right. Yeah. What can we do?
Yeah, if you're trying to learn something new or remember information better,
Yeah.
what should you do?
What should you do? Yeah. So I think the biggest takeaway is the strong confirmation that combining spacing and retrieval practice is a highly effective strategy for learning.
Yeah.
So this meta-analysis really reinforces what other researchers and even educational bodies have been recommending.
Right.
Right. If you want to master facts and information,
Yeah.
the best retrieval practice should be in your toolkit.
Yeah. So the key idea then is to actively try to recall the information and to do it with some time in between your attempts.
Yes, that's the key.
Okay.
That's the key. And the interesting finding here, I think,
Yeah.
is that you don't necessarily need to obsess over constantly increasing those intervals.
Yeah. Right.
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 So while the expanding schedules are really popular,
Popular.
the research suggests that the most important thing is to simply space out those retrieval attempts.
Yeah.
Whether you follow a strict expanding pattern or not really
Right.
seems to be less critical.
Yeah.
So that's good news, right?
That's good news. It makes it simple.
Yeah.
You keep it simple.
So you can kind of simplify things a little bit,
Yeah.
and instead of stressing about calculating the perfect expanding schedule.
You should really focus on building in regular opportunities to recall what you've learned.
Yeah, build that habit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, like any good piece of research, this study also points out some limitations and areas where future studies could dig deeper.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are some of the things they highlighted?
So they acknowledge the possibility of publication bias,
Right.
particularly in the findings comparing space versus mass retrieval practice.
Right.
So what does this mean?
Yeah.
Studies that sound a positive effect for spacing might have been more likely to get published
Yeah.
than those that didn't.
Right.
Right. So there's a bias in what gets published.
Right.
But importantly, they did account for this statistically.
Yeah.
And the benefit of space retrieval still remains strong.
Yeah.
So that's reassuring.
Yeah.
It's not like the whole thing falls apart when you account for this bias.
Right.
The effect is still there.
They also mentioned that it was hard to fully understand why some studies showed larger benefits for space retrieval compared to mass practice than others.
Yeah.
And this could be due to the the sheer number of studies they looked at.
Right.
It's a meta-analysis, so they're looking at a lot of studies.
Right.
And they might not have had the statistical power to detect some of the subtle differences
Right.
between them.
Right.
And then when it came to the expanding versus uniform schedule question,
Yeah.
they felt that the lack of a clear advantage for expanding schedules was a pretty solid finding.
Yeah.
Especially because they didn't see that publication bias there.
Right.
So that gives more weight to the idea that you don't necessarily need to always expand those intervals.
Yeah.
One area they said they'd like to see more research in are studies that directly compare mass reading, so just reading something over and over. Yeah. With space retrieval practice.
Right.
And that would give us a clearer picture of whether, those benefits are additive.
Right.
If they add on to each other.
Yeah.
Or if there's a more complex interaction.
Yeah.
Between the two.
Yeah.
They also called for more studies that directly compare different spacing schedules.
Right.
Not just expanding in uniform, but also schedules that decrease the time between attempts.
Yeah.
And they want to see that, both in the context of retrieval practice and when you're just restudying material.
Right. Right.
So that would help us to pinpoint, when and if expanding schedules really, really offer an advantage.
Right.
And they also suggest exploring what they call adaptive learning schedules.
Yes, adaptive.
Right. So these would be schedules that adjust the timing of your review
Right.
based on how well you're learning.
That's so interesting.
Right.
Yeah.